Andy, it's the long weekend.
It is.
It's the last long weekend that a lot of people will get until Memorial Day weekend. Well, some people will say St. Patrick's Day, it's a day off anyway, but some people take that. But it's a long weekend. It's President's Day. Actually, Andy, I don't even know what this weekend is anymore. It's President's Day, right?
Dave, I don't appreciate you poking me so early in the morning on these things. So this is something, everybody has their hangups, Dave, whether it's people get, worked up unnecessarily about their sports teams or about, the way people pronounce certain words or whatever it is. There are stupid things that get people riled up. And for me, this is no stupid thing, Dave. Every year we get bombarded with car commercials and furniture store commercials about President's Day sales. We get notifications and announcements. Dave, I know, people should know. This is the George Washington birthday holiday. It always has been at the US government level. The official holiday is a George Washington birthday holiday. There is no such thing as President's Day for the United States as a government. In my beautiful Commonwealth of Virginia, there is no such thing as President's Day. We celebrate Virginia's first son, George Washington, on this day. Even in states that have President's Day, take Illinois, right? Illinois is a President's Day state. They celebrate on the 12th this year, Lincoln's birthday. And listen, if you're from Illinois, by all means, celebrate Abraham Lincoln. Great American, did great things for this country. Celebrate him away. Then the following Monday, they have Washington's birthday, parentheses, President's Day. So they celebrate their, proudest son. I can understand that. Like I can get that. But the holiday for the rest of us, Dave, it's George Washington's birthday. I'm not celebrating Millard Fillmore or James K. Polk on Monday, right? I'm not celebrating Bill Clinton, Dick Nixon, or George W. Bush. I'm not celebrating Donald Trump or Joe Biden on Monday. I don't know if anybody else is. I don't know if it's cutting a cake of freaking Gerald Ford on Monday. It's not President's Day, Dave. It's George Washington's birthday. It's what it's always been. What should always remain. But I tell you this, because I can't stop right now. I'm like, so I got a notice from my own town, my beautiful town of Leesburg, Virginia, announcing the President's Day schedule for the holiday. And I was so pissed because, like, hey, this is our holiday. You should be knowing who it is we're celebrating. You should be proud of who it is we're celebrating and say it right. So it pisses me off at multiple levels, Dave. I get very fired up every year when we don't recognize what this holiday really is.
I just remember growing up. I mean, it was Washington's birthday. Then it was Washington. I feel like it was Washington Lincoln's birthday, and then we just universally said it's President's Day. I
Not
I'm
universally, Dave. Not universally.
I'm just I've never thought 2 seconds more about this than it is. But when I found out that you had this hang up, Andy, I couldn't help but poke the bear today,
Yeah.
and do this. I think you've even gone and written blog posts on this, haven't you, Andy? Admit it.
I think I may have. I mean, I rant on it. So I mean, it's a yearly tradition for me to go off on this and try and fight for George Washington. He did a lot for this country. We should recognize one of our key founding fathers. I mean, look, we would have a kingdom if not for him having some self-control, right? I mean, if he didn't exercise the self-discipline of not being king, president for life, this would be a radically different country and world, right? That now is his complete decision, his complete power to make that decision. Like, we don't appreciate what he did, so I get excited about it. It's you've been slowly indoctrinated. That's how they get you, right? They slowly make changes. You don't really pay attention to it. Next thing you know, you're talking about President's Day too. You don't even realize you've been converted. It's the same thing, Dave. It's the same thing. You've
Well,
been
Andy,
you've been
interesting.
assimilated.
You're going in this way. So you're saying there's a global conspiracy to celebrate every president's on the same thing. We can't celebrate our first president or even our 16th president. We have to celebrate all presidents. So are you? It's a global conspiracy, Andy, or
I
at
mean, Dave,
least
I don't know if it's the Illuminati. I don't know if this is a Russian information operations campaign. I'm not sure who is behind it. My guess is probably got something to do with the Bush family. I'm not sure. I'm just speculating at this point. I'm just spitballing ideas. But yeah, we have had some we've had some
Who
crap presidents, Dave. Right? I mean,
who is the worst who is the worst president, Andy? I mean, it's like who is the worst president? Everyone's gonna like recency biases. Everyone's gonna say Trump
yeah.
was the worst president, but that's the easy out. Let's go like who really was the worst president?
So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it, right? I mean, I've thought there's a string of presidents that honestly, America and the world have forgotten, and rightfully so, right? There's a lot of presidents there in those middle years that contributed zero. Even in recent history, as you know, I think, like I'm not a Trump fan, I'm not a Biden fan, I'm not a Clinton fan, right? But by far, like for me, W is the worst modern president for me. Like I that he like without question, as messy as Trump was, as potentially dangerous as Trump is, at the end of the day, who did worse in the time in office? To this point, George W. Bush is the worst president in the modern era. But there's a string of presidents, the cowards that led us up to the Civil War, right? This was a string of men who knew the Civil War was coming, right? Fraction was coming, a critical point was coming, the division was there, it was getting louder, and they really didn't do anything to address the issues, right? Not the rising issues of who's in charge, right? Is it the state? Is it the nation's capital? What's really the law of the land? Like these issues were bubbling up, and it wasn't really addressed in any direct way. Obviously it's slavery, was coming to a head, didn't really proactively do anything to get ahead of an issue that was already an issue when we wrote the Constitution with this ridiculous three-fifth compromise, but it was there. And they just sort of like, hey, I'm just going to skate on this really thin ice as long as I can, hopefully not be the guy the ice breaks on. I mean, again, I pick on Millard Fillmore because like he's like who the hell cares about Millard Fillmore? He's one of those several presidents that came along. Now we also had presidents that died in office, I think like 3 weeks in, right? I mean, John Taylor, I think died like 3 weeks in. So there's a number of folks we could look at as particularly bad. Obviously, Dick Nixon did some great things and also did some really pathetic things. So you've got a string of really awful men to choose from to this point. There's few that rise above. I'll say of that bunch, I know I'm going way too long on this, but Virginia, home of more presidents than any other, also has a lot of the greatest presidents from Washington to Jefferson to Madison, even James Monroe gets in that boat. So, those first ones were pretty amazing, to include the Adams president. So that's my little history lesson opinion on that, Dave.
Well, there you go. For the record, John Taylor was in office for 30 days before he
Oh, there
died.
you go. There you go.
Or not, no, it wasn't John Taylor. It was it John Taylor?
No, it was Tippecanoe and Taylor
Ty-
too. That was the saying, right?
Tyler too. That was who was the 30? I just had it. William Henry Harrison. Sorry, 30 days, shortest president in the United States. But you had Warren G. Hardee, you had John Tyler, who was he was a defender of slavery. That's one of his big things. Millard Fillmore, who succeeded the Zachary Taylor, who lasted a year into office, and he fell ill and died. So you've got some good ones there in those I guess between like 1820 and then 18. I mean,
Up to Lincoln, really. There's a string of bungling presidents.
well, I mean, what's his name? Andrew Johnson gets into the mix of worst presidents, even
Yeah.
though like because of but he helped with Reconstruction. That's where I think he gets a little bit, but at the same time, he was a big into the post-war racism type of activities that occurred after.
Yeah, he did not live up to his predecessor by any means. And Lincoln
No.
Lincoln was an incredible president, had to deal with an amazing crisis, right? And I really necessarily agree with the way he did things, but I mean he handled it. Lincoln's a great president. I think everybody can agree with that. I'm a big Andrew Jackson as president fan. I think he was a really good president. There's a lot. There's a lot there. There's a lot to celebrate, but there's far more of these presidents to be like, wow, you were completely useless, if not a detriment to our nation. So, and to include our modern presidents, I mean,
Yeah.
some that have been kind of like come and gone, and you're like, really, you didn't really do anything productive in particular. Like, I mean, I look at like Barack Obama was very, to me, likable president, very charismatic, articulate, and like I put him on par with Reagan as far as like the how much I like him as a person as president. but I mean, kind of useless. I mean, didn't really do much at the end of the day. You know, the Obama presidency lacked any like real significant accomplishment, except for maybe drone striking people in a negative way. So like not necessarily the best president himself, even though he was likable. And then the others around him have just for the most part been like, holy shit, we elected this clown as president. I mean, like it's like just like let's please do something different. But Dave, again, maybe we're going too long here on this lesson. But the important thing, Dave, I hope that as we break from this podcast on Monday, we may pour it out, to celebrate. Let's recognize what we're really celebrating. We're celebrating, George W. Bush, America's first president, Virginia's first son. We're very, very proud of who we're recognizing here.
Okay. Well, with that, Andy, we've talked probably way too long. We probably the one or two listeners who are still listening at this point and got their history lesson are probably now moving on to other things. We probably lost them with our history lesson. But Andy, you kind of mentioned about the conspiracy theory part. So here's another fun thing on a Friday, Andy. Did you know, you probably did because you watched the Super Bowl, 2 in 3 Americans approve of the singer encouraging voter turnout. 2 or 3 Americans approve of Britney Spears. I don't know why I said that, but Taylor Swift encouraging voter turnout. But about 1 in 5 Americans believe that she's involved in some sort of covert effort to help Joe Biden win the 2024 election. In fact, among Republicans, Andy, it's even higher. I think it's 1 in 3 that believe there's some sort of conspiracy that she'll somehow find a way to, you know, come to the podium and say, I endorse Joe Biden, and therefore all the Swifties are going to just vote for Taylor or for Joe Biden, turn against Trump. I don't know if you'll recall, Andy, but Taylor had some documentary type of thing. I can't remember if it was on Netflix. It was on something, and she lamented in 2016 not coming out and saying more about the election and her opposition to Trump. And of course that, her parents were on the screen and they were debating this whole thing. Taylor ultimately didn't do anything during 2016, didn't say much in 2020. But now, Andy, she's a global superstar. She's running the biggest concert around the world ever in the history. She's a marketing genius. She's business savvy. She's everything. And she's got these legion of Swifties, Andy. So where do you stand on Taylor Swift is going to be that issue, Andy? Never mind everything else going on in the country. Taylor Swift will turn the election.
So, I say one, she won't turn the election. Like Taylor Swift is not going to be the decisive vote in the election, I don't think, nor her fan base. But like, let's go back from it. I mean, one, I've always loved when people advocate for it. I've got some people that I enjoy and like politically, pundits and whatnot, that like they'll say like they're not even going to vote because they dislike the choices and candidates so much, and I disagree with that. I personally think like you have a responsibility to cast a ballot as a citizen. Like I genuinely believe that everyone that can vote should vote every time we can. Like I think that's a duty. It's an obligation as a citizen in a democracy, as a republic as we have. And I always liked it when there were promotional, efforts to get people to vote. MTV's Rock the Vote. I remember growing up, Dave. You had Chuck D of Public Enemy and Dave Mustaine of Megadeth out there telling people, go out there and rock the vote, right? Getting people out there. I think that's great, right? Get young people excited, like, hey, I should do this. Like, I love it. So if Taylor Swift can encourage people to vote and get her legion of fans to get out there to the ballot box, like that's great, right? But let's give Americans a little bit of credit, right? One, you're not going to vote solely because Taylor suggests you should vote for somebody. Like some people might, but the majority of people will still think through who they want as their president. They're not going to, like they would even maybe publicly acknowledge I voted for this candidate, that candidate to, support their famous person, but they're going to vote who they want to vote for, right? So the influence of people, I think, is overstated too. Like Taylor Swift isn't going to drive 3% of the vote to Joe Biden, right? Now, I mean, it's not a conspiracy. She said she leans to Biden anyway. She prefers Biden anyway. So it's not like it's just new information. So it's a lot of, rambling and whining and freaking out about nothing. Are people upset because, Tucker Carlson is going to say, you should vote for Trump. Like, no, that's who you support. That's who your person is. And if you're a fan and you agree with Tucker Carlson, vote for Donald Trump. And if Taylor says vote for Biden, or if Taylor says vote for Jimmy Smith or whoever it is, like, if you agree with her and you like her, then vote for, like, it's such an overstated nonsense issue, especially as a conspiracy. Like, that's just garbage, Dave.
Well, but that's where we're at, Andy. I mean, unfortunately, I think that's where, I mean, I listen to some of these things all the time. I mean, there are real legitimate discussions about Joe Biden is being played by an actor. All of these people in Congress are actors. And I'm having a hard time. I mean, again, when Trump was in, it was the Q came up, all the QAnon stuff. Then it died down, and now it's back up again. It's resurrecting. I mean, conspiracy theories in themselves are so challenging because the purveyor of that continues to live deeper into, well, the only reason for this is because of that, and that's because of that, and you can never nail it down on where you can never. It's a conspiracy. There's no evidence one way or the other except somebody's belief. And I think this is just where the challenge comes with all of these things. And it's frustrating to be able to hear that's where the state of we're at on who we're going to make decisions based on these conspiracies. We're going to believe that people are not smart enough to vote in and of themselves. They have to have Taylor Swift tell them to vote. And that's just where I get a little bit challenged on that front.
You don't like the wild ass statements, theories, and exaggerations, Dave. I mean, that is what we have here. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, let's acknowledge, like, it is possible. It is possible that we are living the weekend of Bernie's presidency. I mean, Joe Biden may in fact be dead, and he may be being controlled by human puppeteers. I mean, there's a remote chance. Like, I can maybe accept that's a possibility at this point, having seen Joe kind of move on stage. Maybe. So that one I might buy into. But yeah, it is a sad state. I mean, look, I have conversations with people that I like and respect that are just fully committed to an opinion and a view that, like, I think you can hold those opinions and views, but with no room for anything else, right? There's no room for, maybe I should just question this a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't be fully in the bag for this person, that person, this idea, that idea. There's a lot of rabbit holes that Americans are running into these days. And a lot of those rabbit holes, Dave, I mean, to be honest, like, they're fueled by external parties that are trying to divide Americans, and give us, division and tension and bullshit that separates us. Like, there's purposeful efforts to do that, and too many Americans are buying into it, right? I mean, it's one thing to disagree on who you like and don't like, but to have openness that, hey, this person that I do like isn't perfect, and maybe there is something to the other person, other persons. I think we have less tolerance for that idea today, and that's sad.
Yeah, it really is sad. So, but let's continue going down here. Andy, speaking of opinions and thoughts, Mama Jabbour,
Yes.
one of our loyal listeners, and we get some good feedback on there. And yes, Mama Jabbour, I'll clean up a little bit better. Okay, so I'll just say that up front. But she's one of our loyal listeners. She also, like, takes to the pen and she writes and talks about her feelings. She recently did this. She, posted a blog post about, starting with an encounter she had as, going back to the Girl Scout days,
Yeah.
and then getting knocked up for, or hit up for, some
Did
Girl
you say my
Scout
mom got
cookies.
knocked up? Is that you say my mom
I
got
know that came
knocked
out a little weird, didn't
up?
it? So, hey, Andy, you're gonna have another brother or sister. Here you go. Talk about the foot long. Yeah. So, yeah, your mom got hit up for some Girl Scout cookies, as we all do, and then, her kind words about growing up in a beautiful world, kind of started her thinking about her routines that she goes through, and this whole Biden Trump thing. Hey, do you want to take it from here, Andy, and give a little?
I can, yeah. Things
Yeah.
are kind of interesting. I mean, my mom, just like we do, Dave, she likes to rant and rave a little bit, and she does it in a regular
She's,
blog that
she's
she has.
Lebanese, Andy. I mean, this is what they do, right?
She's Palestinian, Dave. My
Oh,
father was
pal. Sorry,
Lebanese.
I'm sorry.
Hey, different countries here. Let's recognize, right? But no, but you're right. You're right. They're a colorful people, to say the least. Either way, right? But but she likes to get excited about certain things. She has a lot of strong opinions, and so she wrote this in her most recent post. She wrote, at this age of 80, right? So my mom's 80 years old now. My blood pressure vacillates often, and the slightest change in my normal routine, a simple task, cause me to stress. So while Trump and Biden are only humans subject to feeling stress and forgetfulness at their ages, with which I sympathize, they've also chosen to be in highly responsible positions while I did not. Right. And so she's saying is like, hey, I get a little bit more flustered than I used to doing things. I get a little bit more stressed out doing certain things than I maybe used to. Sometimes the things are harder to think through maybe than they were when I was 25 years old, and that's fine. Like that aging process is fine, and she's still healthy and sharp. But maybe she shouldn't have her finger on the nuclear button, right? And she's saying, meanwhile, while Trump and Biden are going through normal aging, there's nothing like shameful or wrong about forgetfulness or word stumbling. Maybe they shouldn't be the ones in the White House, right? And she's making the same point that every American from John Stewart we talked about earlier this week to countless others saying like, hey, like or don't like these guys, and the majority don't like these guys, like you're just like get the fuck out of the White House. like,
Right.
like go mow the lawn, go have a Corona on the beach, go enjoy your life. Just stop trying to run the country and the world. You're not the person to do it, and so I really appreciate the fact that she's making this argument. She's looking at it candidly, honestly, a few years older than Trump, I think around the same age as Biden, right? I think, but or a little bit older than Biden, but like there comes a time when maybe you shouldn't be in that key leadership position,
Yeah.
especially the White House. It's crazy. So I appreciated the post. Thanks for bringing that up, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this goes back to our discussion on Wednesday with John Stewart and just calling these things. What are we afraid of here? Like that's what I don't understand, and that's what I'm really struggling to grips on. And really, if you look around the world, where else is this occurring? I mean, this is really the best that we have to offer. And if you really want to talk about our influence around the world, and then you see what we have in office over the last 10, 12, 20, go back to the turn of the century. I mean, like that influence has slowly started going away. We're more focused on our these type of things than we are about where we stand on education, where do we
Yeah.
stand on mortality rates, where do we, and look, those numbers are not good, yet we continue to be mired in a lot of these across the aisle type of things, and our own impediments to even getting basic things done. We have agreements to do enact laws and stuff. We're just not doing it. I mean, this is the most ineffective Congress that has been in the history with regards to the least amount of work done, thanks GOP. But because they're more concerned about infighting, they're more concerned about impeaching the Homeland Security Director.
As even a Republican senator acknowledged, was a completely wasteful time spent, right? The thing has no legs. It has no chance of moving forward. Complete political theater, Dave. It should be noted. A complete waste of taxpayers' time and money in congressional theatrics.
And for what, Andy? Because he's not doing enough, but yet, the bill that was put on their lap, a bipartisan agreed bill that put on their lap to do something about, they decided they're not going to do anything with it. And now the speaker wants to go visit with Biden and have a one-on-one. But Biden, rightfully so, said, "What do you want to talk about? You're negotiating against yourself." It's kind of like these NBA trades or these sports trades where somebody overpays for some, like one of these players, and the price is so high, everyone's like, who are you bidding against? It's
Yeah.
the same thing. It's like the Republicans are arguing against themselves. I mean, they're not arguing against the Democrats. They're not arguing against the president. They're arguing against themselves because they can't get out of their own fucking way. It's just aggravating, Andy.
And Dave,
So,
we're literally seeing that with former
yeah,
Speaker Kevin McCarthy's comments, right? Like
yeah.
he's bashing his own party, right? I mean, there's so much congressional infighting with the Trump loyalists, the whatever, the rhinos, whatever they want to call themselves, right? And McCarthy isn't even one of the, isn't considered like a rhino type guy. Like it's just like there's just so much squabbling. We talked about this before. It's the junior high Congress, and it's
Yeah.
got nothing even to do with like policies and positions. It's kids running amok. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
they've got their hands in the purse of our country. They've got the ability to send our troops to war. I mean, like their potential for damage is so high that we keep putting these clowns back in office. And please, I'm not even just talking about Republicans. This the antics are on both sides,
Yeah.
surely. But right now, today, I mean, the Republican Congress is really just wasting time and money when there's real issues to address, and it's just incredibly frustrating. Yeah, Dave,
I,
tough here on a Friday. Tough here on a Friday. This
I,
is why we're not celebrating President's Day, Dave, because it's
I
not
know.
worth celebrating.
This is a tough pod today, Andy. We probably should just wrap this thing up. So, Andy, one thing though, I will ask, just on the end, just let's put politics aside. Are you going to see Madam Web this weekend, Andy? I know you're a big Madam Web fan.
Dave, I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't even know what we're talking about right now. I don't
It,
even know what you're asking me. I feel like
oh, Andy, Google Madam Web. Just Google it, and you won't be. That'll brighten your day up. This is probably going to be one of the worst movies of all time. It's so bad. Like how you have some of these bad movies, Andy, and people actually develop a cult classic around those movies. That's probably what this is going to become. This is so bad. Even the actors who are in this, Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, very big actors. Um, they're even like trying to distance themselves from all of this movie. It's getting some of the worst reviews ever.
wow.
So if you want to end on a happy note, just kind of check around for Madam Web and see one, why was this movie even made? And then, maybe it becomes one of those cult classics. Do you ever see like what was that one like Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead or something? I can't
Yeah, yeah.
remember.
Yeah,
Um,
I was never a fan. Like, there's a lot of like pseudo horror type movies that like I just never cared about or get into. I think sort of cult classic wise, I think closest
yeah.
thing I got to that genre, I think it's not even a genre, right? But sort of, I think one of the unappreciated movies it was a Clockwork Orange, which is a great book.
Oh, I
It's a
love
great
that.
movie. It's a great
I
movie,
love
but
it.
it's not like yeah, you're right. It's not like popularly embraced, especially today. But it's a I mean, it's like I said, it's a fantastic story, and it's a good movie, and I think there's sort of a cult following of that
Yeah.
movie. So, but yeah, I stay away from. I mean, I know when you said Madam Web, like I don't know if you're taking me to some like random strange like BDSM site or something. I didn't know where you were taking me with that. So, thanks for clarifying. Thanks for clarifying.
All right. No, well, no problem at all, Andy. So, all right. Well, why don't we? This is just this pod didn't quite go where we were thinking, but here we are, Andy. Let's wrap it up for the week. We will not pod on Monday. We will respect Washington's birthday, Andy,
Amen.
and give it its true appreciation. We will not pod, but we'll be back on Wednesday. And until then, Andy, I'll catch you next time. Enjoy